Hi everyone, I'm Tim Gassner. I'm presenting, as she said, on the changing role of the architect. And so my presentation is going to be like kind of a little mixed up, but this is the general order. I took an architectural history class, an architectural theory class, a new media educational technologies class, and a human learning and memory class. And so in talking about the evolving role of the architect, I want to start back in 1500 BC in Egypt with Senmut, the architect. He was a government official and an architect, and a designer. He was famous for designing Hatshepsut's mausoleum, Deir el-Bahir. And Hatshepsut was actually a female Egyptian empress. And she dressed like a pharaoh, and she was a successful pacifist, and she was also a great builder. So the architect was also her lover as well, interestingly enough. But anyways, it was commonplace for the architect in Egyptian society to be a religious leader in communicating with the divine. He kind of serves as a cosmologist to his people. Death is particularly an important characteristic of the Egyptian people, or ancient Egyptians, that is. And there are certain rituals that one must perform in order to satisfy the gods in such an event as a god like the pharaoh passing away. The pharaoh, or the architect, therefore designs based upon this ritual space. And so if you see here, there's all these different spaces that one would proceed through in the burial of the pharaoh. And so, in the case of Senmut, he plans this kind of bigger, overarching procession. Like, even though this is just the mausoleum itself, but actually they would start off in the capital, and then they would go down a river. And then they would march off into this kind of epic. This is by the way, this is not still standing. I mean, this is the Egyptian government decided to rebuild this, so it doesn't look this good after thousands of years. But anyways, so the architect wanted to demonstrate the one pharaoh's command over the earth and how they would proceed through spaces in the temple with other rituals taking place. And there was also a secret compartment, too, inside the mausoleum so that the architect, or so that grave robbers wouldn't come and steal away the body. And so the architect in Egyptian society is known as urban planner, cosmologist, building designer, and a divine medium to communicate with the gods. Excuse me. And so, skipping ahead to antiquity, in the 1st century, Vitruvius was famously known for writing the book De Architectura, or it was also known as the 10 Books of Architecture. And this was dedicated to Caesar Augustus. And it's a collection of books on a variety of different topics, from design principles to material science, fluid dynamics, and also structural engineering. In short, his architectural theory was firmitas, utilitas, and venestas. Basically, it means solid, useful, and beautiful, or structural, functional, and aesthetic. His principles were inspirational to architects such as Alberti, Brunelleschi, and Leonardo da Vinci. And there's some. Here we can see some of his Vitruvius's work, and he also was very into like the construction technologies that would go into building, or constructing a building. And I'm sorry. And so Leonardo da Vinci diagrammed Vitruvius's ideas as he studied the mathematics of the body and its proportions. Vitruvius emphasized that an architect should be a good engineer as he is a designer. And so there's this kind of idea that Da Vinci abstracted, where that there's a certain aesthetic beauty in a perfect kind of parameter defined by God. And this became a kind of module for architecture in the sense that it's similar to the golden ratio. And what they do is they're exploring a kind of a divine aesthetic in the human body and through nature through applied math, which is still relevant to a field or to approach to architecture today. And so the architect is the engineer, or the architect is known as to be a more kind of empirical and a more innovative of technology. So he's this kind of scientific figure. Unlike Egypt, the architect is less seen as this kind of divine power, but nonetheless he maintains a very high status in society. Chicago in the 19th century. Chicago was the biggest meatpacking industry in the world. The Great Plains provided an ecology and resources that served as the foundation for Chicago's cattle industry. The development of new technologies such as the railroad compacted space and furthered the intensification of consumption. And this raised demands sequentially. This has led to the meatpacking's disassembly line. And so as you see to the left, that's the assembly line. And then that led then to the assembly line to Ford's Model T's assembly line. And so the United States becomes this kind of home front for this new kind of capitalism. And this capitalism is new because of these kind of technological innovations and inventions that serve as this catalyst for mass consumption and production. Because if you can remove resources quickly from one place to another, there's this kind of new opportunity for mass consumption. And so Burnham and Roots are responsible for spearheading the construction of the first skyscrapers. Skyscrapers were a direct product of this unique American capitalism. The city of Chicago was growing too dense to support a space for a larger workforce. In order to maintain the demands of an intensified market, capitalists built upwards. So according to the Encyclopedia of Chicago, the firm had over 200 employees. So the architectural office functioned efficiently as if it were an assembly line. And that's what you see these different workers doing, is that they're all delegated certain tasks. So not only does the assembly line is this kind of result, whatever, of these technological innovations, but also it has a kind of domino effect throughout society where you have more and more specialization occurring. And usually the architect in Egypt would be kind of this ultimate designer, or even in the times of Da Vinci. But now, more so today, that day is kind of gone, and there is no like one architect, one man who kind of handles the entire project. It's divvied up into many different roles. And so, interestingly enough, cybernetics occurs, or Norbert Wiener in 1948 introduces the concept of cybernetics. And I'm sorry to back up. This role of specialization and this kind of like emergence of like a diversion between the architect and the engineer and the draftsman, whatever. This holds true from like the Industrial Revolution to today. But however, in 1948, with the emergence of cybernetics, and he gets this from the Greek word Kubernetes, which means steersman, which is the same word to derive governor. And if you look at governor, the definition of the word governor, according to the Webster's Dictionary, is a device that automatically regulates the supply of fuel, steam, and water to a machine, ensuring its uniform motion and limited speed. Thus, he defines it as the control and communication in the human and the machine, because the governor is essentially controlling and communicating at the same time. And so Wiener states in Cybernetics and Society that that it is the purpose of cybernetics to develop a language and technique that will enable us to attack the problem and control communications in general but also to find a repertory of ideas, techniques to classify their particular manifestations under this concept. So cybernetics has existed since the dawn of man when he first became conscious of the object serving as a purpose, a tool. And so the novel difference in the 20th century and perhaps the Industrial Revolution has been that man is approaching this great mastery of creations of his tools, particularly the machine. And this can be referenced back to the last picture with the disassembly line and the assembly line, that we have these kind of mechanization. Okay, sorry, I have to go a little faster. This mechanization of society, and so man is increasingly becoming more technologically proficient. And so Marshall McLuhan in 1964 declares that the machine is an external organ of the body, and that the media as the extension of man. So electronics are actually biological. They're an organic system with particular effects. A network is a form of communication like any other technology. It is a prosthetic of the human body. And current technologies have shrunk the planet, or he claims, to the size of a planet, giving architects and planners a massive opportunity. And then around the same time, in the 1960s, Dioxides came with this new concept called echistics. Echistics is architecture based on global statistics. He stated, if data could be controlled, cities could be controlled, and this is a new approach to cybernetics. The real dimension of cities is time and not space, since space is compressed. The rejection of architecture as a self-contained object in favor of nomadic organizations animated by, he rejected architecture as self-contained objects in favor of nomadic organizations animated by circulation of patterns. And then he had the idea that buildings are merely shells for movements, and the fact that if architects are to stay true to the principle of function, that he must reduce the fixations on shells and instead become concerned with the networks that interact with these shells. Sorry, for the sake of time, I'm just going to move on. And so, anyways, in my new media class, we're exploring this idea of this kind of like developing technology, and then how the machine is becoming ever so increasingly important. And basically we have here the Google glasses that are soon to be released, and then these haptic gloves that are being developed for tactileness. And basically what the course is about is presenting educational technologies or new educational technologies to better assist people. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to combine these technologies together and kind of form this this new this new tactile kind of augmented reality. So you can bring forth that this kind of new experience that is becoming ever so increasingly close today. And so this is like only a few sketches of like what I have right here. And the possibilities of this would be to like, okay, well, so what can you do in this virtual environment that you can't do in with everyday objects? And so basically you can manipulate objects with limited resources, and then also you can kind of experience, or you can create experiences such as folding proteins and collaborative learning without in a new different perception. And so technology is kind of furthering in this interesting new way where we have this kind of development of the brain-computer interface where we can take this a step further in this kind of the role of architecture is changing in the sense that technology is increasingly advancing and man becomes more of a master of his tools. So he begins to, like these are, for instance, to the left up here is this EEG brain-computer interface where you can manipulate, mouses across the screen. And then there on the right is just telling you like a different kind of approach where there's implants inside someone's brain. And then here is a research with these you see here, the presented patterns. There's a research actually taking place here at Berkeley depicting on what someone sees, and we can actually see what someone else is seeing via a computer decrypting your visual cortex. And so this is interesting because if this technology, and if it becomes, it keeps on increasing and intensifying, that there's a certain, that we can almost like place ourselves in this new kind of virtual world. And in our architectural theory class, we were actually analyzing the movie Blade Runner. And the big question about that was that how does that, okay, so man has become this master of his tools. How does these tools, how do we interact with with his tools, and how does architects, how can architects kind of interact with these new tools of man? And so my theory is that architecture is changing from becoming merely kind of constructing and designing the physical environment to managing and designing cybernetics and the environment within cyberspace. So the role of the architect is to build virtual worlds designed or designated for a program or set of programs, and perhaps to construct new worlds and change different parameters so that we can experience these interesting new worlds. Thank you.